Hey everyone, so I just want to do this video here, and I want to make sure that I get all this information on record and archived, and I might even cover it in a live stream here shortly. Maybe a little later on today, maybe tomorrow, or maybe over the next few days. I haven't yet decided. But anyways, like I say, so what this is going to be pertaining to is the fact that now, and I'm sure you've heard this information, that now, all of a sudden now, basically a year later, the Trudeau Liberals, the federal government, is now going to start screening and testing for people who are traveling internationally from other jurisdictions around the world. They're actually going to start being proactive and making sure people are tested before they actually travel to this country. Now, I will just say, I'm not going to take a stance pro or con on either side of the equation in this particular video, because like I say, that's going to require, that's much more extensive. That's what I'll do. I'll get more in depth and more in detail in terms of my position, in a live stream when I can spend more time with it. But basically right now I'm just going to point out the hypocrisy, the difference, and the insanity of it all, right? In terms of the reaction, is like, this is so, like, this seems so much like you got children who are reacting to something that they have no information about, and they're just throwing whatever the hell they can at it and hoping it'll stick. That's basically how the federal government and the provincial governments in this country, and not just in Canada, but a lot of jurisdictions around the world, have been dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak, or the so-called pandemic, right? So shutting down international travel a year later, basically, like I say, almost exactly, that's the crazy part, it's almost exactly a full year later after the initial cases and outbreak, and now you're going to start shutting down the border or making sure people have to have tests before they get on international flights to come to this country. Like, what happened to the first 300 and whatever days, right? And it's a little late now. Like I said in a post on my Facebook page, doing this now is basically akin to closing the barn doors after the horses have already escaped. Not much good now, is it? Anyway, so like I say, I'm going to deal with the headline. Now, this one goes all the way back to January the 17th of 2020. Headline: Canadian airports aren't screening travelers from China for new coronavirus. Graham Slaughter, CTV News writer. Avis Favora, medical correspondent, CTV National News. This was published Friday, January 17th, 2020. So back, and let's keep in mind, folks, this all originated, well, as far as we know, anyway, the way the media reported on it, this all originated in Wuhan, China. And as we also learned, China was very much proactive in terms of shutting off that city from the rest of the country, locking everything down. We've seen the reports of them welding grandparents into their houses and stuff. No, but we've seen all that crazy ass reporting and how authoritarian they went to lock down that city to prevent the spread to the rest of the country, to the rest of China. But did they stop or restrict or impede flights? Right? No. They were concerned about their own peeps, but in terms of spreading it all around the world, international flights going everywhere, didn't seem to care too much about that, right? Now, I'll say, if they weren't, well, on the other side of the equation, well, I guess the only people left at that point in time would have been those who were in these other countries who have these flights coming into their jurisdiction. Well, that's the only other people that you have. If the people on the other side, if the people in China aren't going to do it, well, the only thing you have left are the people on the other side of the equation who are in control of the airlines, government, or these CEOs, right? But nobody was proactive at that point in time. I guess the CEOs were like, no, we still want to make lots of money, still want to have lots of airfare, lots of travel, want to build up the billions, right? I suppose big government, well, we heard like people like Theresa Tam and Trudeau was like, oh, we don't want to offend the Chinese people. It might not be politically correct to do so, right? So basically back then, like I say, when this virus was just starting to spread around in China, like, shutting off international travel or making people perform tests before they come to Canada, how much you want to bet that would have done a really great job in terms of not just flattening the curve, but basically eliminated it, right? So, because they did that in China by preventing. Now, I'm not defending all this stuff. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying in terms of strategy, even for the authoritarians, even for the unconstitutional mandates and edicts, no matter what, it seems like they failed miserably. Or not just seems like, let's just be honest, folks, they did. Okay? Anyway, so like I say, I probably don't have to read too much from this article. Well, let me just read a little bit here. So let's go into it. So Toronto, the United States, has joined a growing list of countries screening air travelers from China for a new virus linked to 2 deaths and dozens of infections, but Canada is so far not taking the same step. Public Health Agency of Canada confirmed Friday that airports in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver are rolling out new messages on arrival screens asking travelers from Wuhan, that central Chinese city where the illness is believed to have started, to contact the border service agent if they are experiencing flu-like symptoms. Yeah, please let us know. But it's all voluntary, of course. That's the thing with government. Voluntary for this, but not for anything else. Hashtag taxation theft. Anyways, don't get me started on that. If a traveler steps forward and shows signs of an infectious disease, they are then screened by a specially trained quarantine officer who can identify whether or not the passenger's condition presents a potential public health. Anyway, so in other words, folks, no screening, and unless you're going to actually tell on yourself, there was nothing stopping, hindering, or hampering international travel or the spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19, in Canada. Nothing. And like I say, that was back when, if you had done so, not suggesting it should have or not, I'm just saying, at least you would think it would have a much more profound effect than what we're seeing now, basically a year later. So yeah, here's the new one, folks. As you can see, headline of this article, new COVID-19 testing rules for travelers to Canada to begin January 7th. And yeah, no, that's not last year. That's this year. That's in 2021. Like I say, almost a full year later. This report by Man Amidi, Canadian Press Staff, December 31st, 2020. Ottawa, anyone arriving in Canada starting January 7th will need to have a negative COVID-19 test before boarding a flight, the federal government said Thursday, as the Liberals urged vacationers abroad to prepare. Flyers aged 5 and up will need to have a negative PCR test within 72 hours of their scheduled departure and must show the results to their airline before they board their flight. Travelers who receive a negative test result must still complete the mandatory 14-day quarantine upon their arrival in Canada. Either before or upon arrival, travelers will have to provide a quarantine plan for federal officials to review. If officials aren't satisfied, the government said people will be required to quarantine in a federal facility. But what's these federal facilities? I was told, or what I heard is there wasn't any federal facilities. Randy Hilliard told us that they were building these facilities all across the country. But the Trudeau Liberals basically called him a conspiracy theorist for even suggesting such. But yet in this article, they're saying there are these federal facilities. So, I don't know. Once again, folks, the statement that came hours before the start of 2021 said Canadians vacationing abroad should immediately start arranging for a COVID-19 test to avoid delays in coming home. The details arrived one day after cabinet ministers decided that Canada would join other countries in making a negative PCR test a travel requirement. A PCR test is designed to detect minute amounts of the novel coronavirus that causes COVID-19, usually through a swab up the nose or in the mouth. As we've heard, that's another thing with these PCR tests. I mean, how many reports have we seen so far where you get a lot of false negatives or false positives, or is it just false positives? Either way, they're false results, false readings, right? So you might be denied the ability to even come home or be quarantined, even if you don't actually have COVID-19, but a faulty test said you did. So, like I say, a lot of stuff to talk about this, and it's definitely more than I want to cover in this short standalone video. So, back into this article to see what else they have to say. Transport Minister Marc Garneau had been in contact with airlines on Wednesday as the high-level details rolled out. On Thursday, the government said the January 7th start date was designed to provide airlines with enough time to comply with the new rules. The National Airlines Council of Canada, which represents the country's largest airlines, warned of major issues in Ottawa's plans, including what options passengers have if their jurisdiction does not offer the kind of testing the government accepts. Anyways, folks, I'll place a link to both of these articles in the description of the video below. And like I say, I'm definitely going to be talking about this stuff, getting more extensive in terms of the coverage. And not just these two articles, but this whole testing stuff in general anyways, right? And I'll probably do that in a live stream. I'm not sure, like I say, if I'm going to do it, but it's definitely going to be coming out soon. But I just wanted to at least get this on record, just to show you the kind of insanity. Like I say, when the actual Wuhan virus, the epicenter where this outbreak began, when this was all taking place very early on. And that's the thing. Trump, as you've seen, even CTV had acknowledged Trump and his administration was actually screening travelers for COVID-19. Now, once again, obviously there was some people who failed at their jobs and their duties in doing so, because it still ended up taking place regardless. But of course, there was a lot of pushback. That's the thing. Trump was trying his best to implement these things, but his political counterparts and opponents and the media mouthpieces were saying, oh, Trump, you're a racist. You're a xenophobe. Or was it not xenophobe? What is it when you're Chinese? Anyways, you heard the kind of insults that they were lobbing at Trump for even daring to suggest such a thing. But at the very least, I can say that if this was actually done properly, whether it's by the U.S. or Canada, and once again, not accepting or defending these restrictions on our mobility rights, but I will just say at the very least, these people who are suggesting that their whole thing, the reason why they want to do these things is to save the people, right? Well, think of how many people could have been saved. And once again, not me making that argument, just showing the hypocrisy and the absolute failure of the response of those in charge of either jurisdiction. What can I say, Canada? For those of you who keep placing your trust, your faith, and your hopes in these central planning overlords, well, no matter who they are, I'm just going to tell you one more time, for good old time's sake, you're going to be massively disappointed, and hopefully at some point in time come to realize that it's all wishful thinking. And none of it is grounded on reality or even any semblance of sanity. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.